Hello, I'm Fei Kwan. This is It's About Youth. Preschool education is often the first formal step of a child's journey towards lifelong learning. However, there are still several challenges that need to be addressed when it comes to ensuring that all our children have access to quality preschool education. To unpack this a bit further, joining me on the show is Aija Rinkinen, World Bank Senior Education Specialist, and Tham, World Bank Education Consultant. Welcome to the show.
Thank you so much. This is our pleasure.
It's a pleasure having you too. Now, firstly, Malaysia has made some progress when it comes to preschool education. Our enrollment rates have improved over the years. It's from 67% in 2009 to 84% in 2020. But of course, these rates have dropped a little bit during the pandemic. Aija, what sort of roadblocks are we facing now when it comes to bringing our children back into preschool?
Yeah, Malaysia was on a very good track on getting all the preschool age children to be enrolled in preschool education, but then pandemic happened. And Malaysia is not alone on this. So the roadblocks that we saw when we were preparing the report of preschool education that was just launched a couple of weeks ago, there are several of them. But to mention a few, there is the affordability issues. And especially the private preschool, of course, there is a fee, and also in public preschools, there are costs for parents. The learning materials, the school uniforms, the transportation to preschools. And pandemic hit very hard. Some of the families, especially the poorest families, the B40, B20 families. So it was kind of the affordability issue. Can you afford to send a child to preschool? And then the household incomes dropped. We made a survey at the World Bank, and the preschool enrollment and enrollment to school was already lower before pandemic, but it dropped during the pandemic. So the pandemic affected especially the poorest households. And then there is also lack of awareness why the preschool would be important for children. And some parents think that, oh, they will be learning all the things they need when they go to primary school, and they don't kind of realize that the skills start developing on early age, even before that. And if you miss year or 2 years on skills development, then you can, of course, gain some academic skills when you go to school, but not maybe all of the kind of basic communication and cooperation type of foundational learning skills and school readiness skills. And then, of course, because preschool is not compulsory in Malaysia, so parents can choose. And sometimes when a country makes preschool education compulsory, it's also a signal for parents that the government finds that to be important. And then I would also like to mention that there are limited seats still in some areas, especially. The Ministry of Education and KEMAS have added preschool places, but it's still not enough. There are still kind of areas where the availability of preschool seats is limited, because parents want that the preschool is close to their houses, or if it or the other convenient, or if it's close to their workplaces, and these needs do not match always. So there might be a preschool place too far away from the house or the workplace, or there is no public preschool places available, or affordable private preschool places. And then there is a little bit also lack of coordination between agencies and ministries. Preschool is organized in multiple kind of ministries, organizations, and private and public parts. And then there is a need for closer cooperation between the providers, so we could map where there is the need and map where there are the places and how to fill the gaps in cooperation with all the organizations.
So basically for operations to be a bit more streamlined, right? There's a lot of factors that you've just mentioned there. Hopefully we can unpack it during this show. But Yin, actually I'd like to get your thoughts, because Aija was talking about the lack of awareness among parents, really. So why should young parents be concerned about sending their children to preschool in the first place? You know, what's the importance of exposure to early childhood education?
Yep. So like Aija mentioned earlier, the stuff that you learn at preschool, those compounds later in life. So it's very important to start early. And these are foundational skills. We are talking about not just basic literacy or numeracy. We're talking about social skills, your ability to interact with peers, to communicate with peers, emotional skills, how do you regulate your own emotion, as well as cognitive skills, because they learn through playing in preschools, and these are problem-solving skills that they're picking up at early age, actually. But the thing is, like I mentioned as well, this is awareness. When we interview, when we do survey with parents sometimes think that it's okay to miss preschool, or is that preschool is just somewhere to put your kids as like a childcare option without learning anything, just for them to be safe and to be fed, and that in primary school they will catch up. But preschool is important. It provides the foundation for them to be ready for primary school and to succeed later in life.
Now, we've also seen a bit more priority being put into preschool education. There's been a threefold increase in spending over the last 11 years, and that still only makes up 0.15% of our GDP, and only 3% of the Education Ministry's budget for 2021 was allocated towards preschool expenditure. Yinyi, why do you think there's this sort of lack of investment towards preschool education?
So like you said, when we compare Malaysia to other countries, countries that Malaysia aspire towards, we are not investing enough in preschool education. That's, it's also because the budget is limited. I mean, we only have this amount of money that we can spend. So there are a lot of competing priorities within the education landscape itself. But what we are hoping for is that, more investment can be put towards the preschool education, just because even from research point of view, from ROI, return on investment point of view, it is worth it that you spend more on preschool education. But because, for example, primary education is compulsory versus preschool education is not compulsory, and there isn't indicators for us to realize that preschools are important. So the awareness of it would really drive the investment towards preschool education.
Sorry, this is just a quick follow-up question to it. Should we then be making preschool education mandatory, or, like you said, would that sort of be a burden on parents who are just reeling from the after effects of the pandemic? Either one of you can take this.
Yeah, there was a recommendation that the 1 year of pre-primary education would be made compulsory, and then it would be following the international kind of examples, because that's a trend that there is at least minimum of 1 year of compulsory preschool education before starting the primary education level.
And on that note, what kind of gaps and limitations are we currently seeing in our preschools that prevent us from providing high quality and inclusive classrooms? Yinyi?
So there are public provision of preschools, so that's by the Ministry of Education as well as the Ministry of Women and Ministry of Rural Development provides public preschools. There are also private preschool providers. So if we want to move towards making sure that everyone have access to quality preschools, one is the access part. Can we provide more seats on public side as well as the private side? So this could probably include stuff like how can the MOE, how can the Kemas preschools, how can we increase more classes in areas that we need more of this? In terms of quality side, these are, how do we make sure that, for example, if there are complaints about public preschools, say about English proficiency, how can we make sure that parents feel that if I send my kids to public preschools, these are quality public preschools, my kids will be educated well in these preschools. And in private preschools as well, we know the problems with teachers' qualification in the private preschool sectors. How can we make sure that the teachers in private preschools are qualified as well? They are not just branding or not just expensive fees, but also good quality education for the kids.
Yeah, I'll head on to the part about teachers in a little bit, but when you talk about seat availability, right, that really is a common issue, and the Education Ministry has said recently they've announced their goal to set enrollment rates at 90% to prevent further dropouts in primary and secondary school. Beyond increasing seat availability, what sort of strategies are necessary to achieve this goal, or perhaps just any low-hanging fruit that can help contribute towards this objective, Aija?
Yes, of course. This is a complicated issue, and there are a lot that could be done.
Yeah.
But let's just focus on some issues first. First, if we think about the short-term measures or low-hanging fruits, the government could start with a detailed mapping of the situation, so we would have the facts. And we would know that where is the demand, what is the demand, and what is the supply. And then we would know that what needs to be done. Where are the places that are missing, and what would be the options to fill the gaps.
Yeah.
That would be kind of the first thing to do. Then the second one could be supporting the families, sending their children to preschool. And now we are talking the poorest families. And government has been using these methods already. We know that the Ministry of Education, KIMAS, they have been adding preschool classes. They have been addressing the topic, and that is very, very good thing, but it's still, there is the work to done.
Yeah.
And also Ministry has been giving fee assistance and subsidizing some of the services, and it is a good thing, but it could continue. So there are preschool related costs that are quite heavy for some parents. So if there was a fee assistance or a subsidized service, it would be beneficial for some children in the poorest families. But then in the longer run, we already discussed the option of having the 1 year of preschool education compulsory. Yeah. That could be an option to consider, kind of giving the message to the communities and parents that preschool is important. And it would also then be a message that government is putting effort to assuring the resources for the preschool education as well. And then continuing to add the seats, that would be a thing to do. But then there are a lot of kind of licensing and process issues that can be done especially with the private preschool providers, because now the early childhood education is under Ministry of Women, and preschool education is under Ministry of Education, and there are different providers for the services, and now the licensing is under different ministries. And so, and sometimes the licensing process is, we heard that it's quite hard for some private providers, especially in rural areas, to do the licensing, because you need to travel far away, and there are costs to go and do the licensing process. So there are things that we could make easier for the providers to license their preschools.
Coming back to the point on coordination among ministries with their stakeholders, and also the issue of affordability that's always being driven. Well, lots more to discuss, but before that, let's head for a quick break. Stay with us. Welcome back to It's About Youth. Today I'm joined by Aija Rinkinen, World Bank Senior Education Specialist, and Tham Yi, World Bank's Education Consultant. Now, earlier we spoke a little bit about the importance of preschool education, but as we've established, one of the factors that really contributes to quality preschool education for our children is having quality teachers as well to guide them throughout these few years before primary school. Yet only 27% of private preschool teachers currently hold a diploma in ECCE, Early Childhood Care and Education. This is a big difference from the Malaysia Education Blueprint's goal, right? I understand it was to have all teachers hold this diploma by 2020. Aija, what do you think led to this setback? What led to this setback?
Yeah. First, I want to mention that the public preschools have qualified teachers. So the numbers in public preschools are very good. So the issue is mostly here on the private sector. And again, no issue in education is simple. So there are multiple kind of angles that we can take to look the topic. But I would say that first there, like we discussed earlier, that the students need to have access to preschools. So also the teachers should have access to teacher training, to be trained as preschool teachers. So it's not whatever training, but it needs to be training to be a preschool teacher. So there should be access to preschool teacher training programs. And at the moment, there are problems beyond Klang Valley area to find a place close to your home or place where you live or where you work to take the trainings. And then another big topic is the affordability. Because
once again, affordability.
Yes, so we always go back to the same topics. So because it is quite expensive to go and get your kind of a training to become a teacher. And then when we talk about the preschool education teacher salaries, the salaries are quite low. So then the investment that you put on the training is quite high comparing to the salary that you will be then able to make after you work as a teacher. And there are models globally where there are some types of exemption programs. So maybe in Malaysia we could look the exemption requirements. So the previous learning or learning by doing or learning on the work site could be taken to be part of the qualification program. So it would make it easier for teachers to get the minimum qualifications to be a teacher with these type of models. And then maybe not all the preschool teachers see the value of getting their diplomas. So if there is no career development or better salaries, and there is only kind of a need to invest their own money or getting away from the job and go into training, they maybe don't see the value on it. And then lastly, I would say that the parents could maybe start asking the teachers that, do you have a qualification and what type of qualification you have? So keeping the schools accountable for having qualified and staff with their license and trainings.
I think what you said, the thing is many preschool teachers, accredited or not, they tend to change career paths, right, because of low wages and unclear career pathways beyond that. Then what can we look into then to ensure that preschool teaching is a sustainable profession, especially for young graduates who are about to enter this field? Yin-Yi?
Maybe also to add on to the earlier discussion, so it is a market of supply and demand, right? But if you don't demand for quality teachers or if you don't demand for qualified teachers, then there won't be the supply, or people wouldn't want to get into that. So when we see about the low wages among preschool teachers, what we see is that there's a need to elevate the profession. So one is that the teachers themselves need to be seen as professional. So these are, if we want our children's primary school teachers, secondary school teachers to be like degree graduates or even master's graduates, why are we okay with, say, SPM leavers teaching our young children? Because it's a specialized body of knowledge and skill set. It's not just childcare. So what we see is there's one, the quality of teachers themselves needs to go up first, and this is by making sure that they have good pre-service training. So these are, like we mentioned earlier, the diploma in ECCE, making them more affordable, making them more accessible. Also, quality in-service within their teaching career, continuous professional development for the teachers themselves, so they can continue to update, to upskill themselves. And then on the market demand side, so this is linked. This is a greater thing, like a continuous awareness raising thing that parents, the market need to realize that it's important to have quality teachers, demand for it, and in a way, as you demand for it, you be able to pay for it as well. To want to pay for it, because you want good teachers. And then of course there's the larger systemic issue of how the government needs to support even the low-income families to be able to afford good preschool education.
You did mention access for teacher training programs. Is that something that we should be placing more priority on, improving access for teacher training programs in rural and out-of-town areas, especially outside the Klang Valley? Yin Yi?
Yeah. So we do find that a lot of programs are offered within the Klang Valley region. All the big universities are here, but there are a lot of need in the rural areas as well, or in other states, just states beyond the Klang Valley. For example, Sabah and Sarawak, there are a lot of demand for. So people do want to improve themselves, but if they can't get easy access to improving their own qualification, I can't be quitting my job and have no income and then to go and study for a year or for 2 years and then go back to my role. So what we suggest is that if there are other solutions that we can provide, say for example, there are part-time courses. If we can leverage on technological solutions, offer courses in a part-time manner, in an online manner, and those can still be done in a very interactive proper ways of delivering those courses. We are also suggesting for, say, locally coordinated peer learning network, so people can learn from each other within nearby preschools, even preschools from provided by different agencies. So those are the areas that we are proposing as part of the review.
Thus eliminating the need for people out of state to travel all the way just to Klang Valley, finding an accommodation there just for that 1 or 2 years to earn their diploma, right? Now we have a little bit of time left, but so I have a final question for you. We've talked about the importance of the government to put more emphasis on preschool education, perhaps making it mandatory. We've talked about teachers, improving our quality of teachers, but how can other stakeholders, especially the parents and the community, work together to create a more conducive environment for our children in preschool? Aija?
Yes. Preschool is a good example of the multi-sectoral service. So there is a lot of people needed to bring up a child.
Yeah, it takes a village.
It takes a village, actually.
Yeah.
And now we do talk about education professionals now. We talk the government to facilitate the cooperation, because that is a role of a government to facilitate the coordination.
Yeah.
And there needs to be a structure to do so. And when I talk about multi-sectorality, I always want to mention that it's not only education, but it's also health.
Right.
And it's also social services, and it is nutrition.
Yeah,
So there are a lot of issues. It's about having the roads that you can go to school. It's about the school buildings. It's about building the online environment and internet connection so the teachers can learn. So it is really a very, very multi-sectoral topic. But then the government's role in coordinating this work, there are of course multiple options, and you need to decide that what is the model that we are using.
Right.
And there are different ways probably how you work with parents, and different ways how you work with the health providers. But what I really find to be important is to work with parents. Because raising a child, it is parents' job and their priority, and school is supporting the parents. So we need to do it together.
Yeah.
So this is our common goal. And then when parents feel that they are part of the children's school day and school journey, and parents have an opportunity to have a say in their children's life, it also then builds trust between families, communities and the education providers, and trust in believing that everybody is doing their best to bring whatever is the best options for our children in our countries.
Working together to raise a child outside of the home as well, right?
Yes.
Yin, is there anything else you'd like to add on to this?
So there are already framework and structures in place. For example, there are the national preschool quality standards in place, and there are a national curriculum in place. But I think as parents, maybe the one thing that we can start doing is ask questions. So ask the schools, ask the teachers. For example, or is the school license?
Like Aija said, like, do you have?
Whether are you a qualified teacher? What's your education background? And then and the quality standards itself has metrics that the parents can also ask about. For example, is the school safe? And because if the school is licensed, then it has, for example, it has adhered to the safety requirement for preschool. How are teaching and learning being done? How are curriculum translated into learning of my child? So by starting to ask questions like this, it's actually creating a pressure in a way, but also help pressuring all the players in the system to adhere to the quality standards, to raise themselves, to raise their quality as well.
Right. Well, thank you so much for joining me today. It's been a pleasure talking to you. Unfortunately, that's all the time we have. I've been speaking to Aija Rinkinen and Tham from the World Bank. This has been It's About Youth with me, Fei Kwan. Thanks for watching and see you next time.